Hello there. Welcome to the panel. It's just the two of us today. Hello.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
What are we
I'm
talking
back
about
in
today?
England.
Yeah, she's back in England
Hooray.
after abandoning me, and we're on for about 20 minutes. So you lucky lot, you're only going to hear us waffling on for 20 minutes, and then she's going off because she's got her eyebrows to sort out. But that's why she's in the car. She had to drive to where she's going. Unbelievable. Anyway, are you authentic, Rochelle? Or what makes you think you're authentic? Do you think you're authentic?
So, this is a good question. I was thinking about the type of person that I am, and I feel like I've always been a bit of a chameleon. And what I mean by that is that I adapt for who I'm with. And I don't necessarily know whether that's a good thing or not. But it's something that I've always done.
Mm.
So if I'm with one group of people, I can relate to them and I can be a certain way, and then I go to a different group of people and I'm a very different person. Like with my family are absolutely crazy in private, but in public we're quite calm and normal. And like I think it sometimes it's about who you feel comfortable being around. Also sometimes, like, you have, obviously with certain friends you'll have different experiences. So my really close group of friends have been friends since we've been a close group since we were 16. They've all known each other since they were about 4 or 5. I've known them since I was 11. We've been on so many holidays together. We've experienced so many things. They were with me when I lost my husband. I was with, like, one of my friends had a divorce. One of my, like, so some of them have, like, lost babies. Like, all these, like, traumatic experiences that people go through in life, like, that builds a certain amount of, like, of friendship that's more like family. It's blood deep. They're not going anywhere now. We've been friends for 20 years. And then obviously I've got, like, friends who business friends who I much more talk about business and strategy with rather than personal things. And then there's a bit of both, and there's all these different groups of people where I show up as a different version of myself, but I do think that they're all versions of me. It's not like I'm pretending to be someone that I'm not. They just bring out different sides of my character and personality depending on how comfortable I feel or what experiences we've been through. And I think sharing that online is a difficult thing, to show different sides of your personality and your character. And often people are guilty of just showing up as a highlight reel. And when you're trying to sell, you don't want to be like a miserable person, do you? Not that I am a miserable person, but sometimes when you're not feeling 100%, you're feeling down, and you've still got to, like, pull yourself together and show up, because if we're not making sales, we're not making money, and we're not putting food on the table. So I think sometimes online you do have to show up as a more positive, happy version of yourself, even when you don't feel like doing that. How about you?
No, it's do you know, I love these chats because I never know what we're gonna I know I have an idea what we're gonna talk about, but I never know what's gonna come out of it. Very similarly, I think it's where you feel more safe. The more authentic you are, is more how safe it depends on how safe you feel. And whilst I hate the phrase, and I was saying this today in one of Liz's posts, I believe that a safe space is a myth. That I think you can feel safe with people where you can feel vulnerable, and you know that you can have a conversation, and it's not like we were just having a really deep conversation before and stuff, it's not a big deal. It's just a conversation, and it's like you're not going to walk away from here thinking about that conversation going, that's interesting, try and read too much into it. It's just like, we're just having a conversation. And so, and I think those friendships are really, really important. I think in business we're guilty of, and I get it, because there's some people who overshare, And the whole thing is that, well, if I overshare, then my people will find me. And sometimes I feel like sometimes the oversharing for me is just like I really don't care. Like, you know, we're business friends, so how can you help me? And if you want to have a conversation about the personal stuff, let's have a conversation. Like, I don't need it. Sometimes I feel like we've moved from, you know, the Sun newspaper where everything's dramatic and everything's, but we've moved it now to people's profiles on social media. That equally, I am guilty of, if you show me a version of you, if that changes, I can't help but question that. Like, why has it changed?
Yeah,
You
you're
know?
big on that. You're like, you don't understand, do you? When people shift or they make unusual decisions, so you're like, what? I don't understand why
Yeah.
they've done that, because that is not the person that I know.
Yeah, that's the best. Yeah, and especially when they're so hell bent on letting you know that that's who they are. If there's a shift, I really struggle with it, Stephanie. It's something I need to work on, because it's not. I just, it just doesn't align with me.
Yeah.
So because to me, I take people for who they tell me they are. So if you say to me that I can only walk with heels, the day you wear flats, I want to know what happened. I want to know.
Yeah. And then sometimes I think I say to you, like, I don't think it's actually that deep. Like, you, like, people make lots of conscious decisions in life, but I think sometimes you just do things. And I'm a big believer in that. You don't need to justify yourself. So if I change my mind and I go, I don't like wearing heels anymore, I just want to wear trainers, like, that's perfectly fine. I don't need to justify that to anyone. And I think that's, like, you can see you are, obviously that's a really, like,
Yeah,
simplified version, and you're obviously talking about things on a much deeper level. But I think it's good to encourage people to change, like and let people know that it's okay to change your mind. If you were like someone who was racist for the last 20 years, but something changes your mind and all of a sudden you realize you were in the wrong, that's a
what
brilliant
happened? Why are you
thing.
not
Let's
racist
celebrate
anymore?
it. Yeah, let's celebrate that change, that
No,
you've come far and you've grown. And I think that's, like, sometimes people are more accepting, sometimes it's the opposite way and people are changing for the wrong reasons, I suppose. But then,
I don't think it's about right or wrong. I think for me, it's when you have people who you influence. I think that's where I have an issue, is where you have people that you influence and you do something or you behave in a certain way that makes people want to follow you and really want to learn from you. And then you change. You change, and it's not that you've changed. It's not like, oh, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm doing this. It's that whole thing where it makes somebody question your authenticity as to,
yeah,
you know, I think that's where I'm coming from.
I think
I
it's
mean,
more like a change in values.
in values, yes, it's a change in values that I struggle with, because if I come to you, I normally come to people with the value perspective and stuff, and if your values are so different that they don't align, from a friendship perspective and also as a client as well, I will struggle and stuff. Like, there's people that I won't work with because their values and mine just don't match. It doesn't mean they're bad people. I've heard people say incredible things about them. For me, it's just a no. So yeah, but also, so when we talk about the authentic piece, and what made me think about that is because I think we all feel like we are authentic. We all feel like we're authentic until somebody maybe thinks we're not. And whilst I'm all for, it doesn't really matter what other people think, is that whole thing of, do we put ourselves on a pedestal and just assume that what we're doing is right without really looking deep into our actions? Like that self-righteousness thing where, well, yeah, of course we're being right, when actually we're not looking deeper into how we're showing up, and also how we're treating ourselves. Because the thing is, it's like, if our values are lower, then it will manifest itself in ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think you're talking about, like, manifesting it as things like illnesses and stuff like that.
Illnesses, chaos. I'm a strong believer that if you're experiencing sort of like chaos, illness. And I'm not saying I'm not. I know some people go, "What do you mean?" But there are elements in your body that just don't align with how you show up. So, for example, if I'm not speaking my truth, it could manifest as like a sore throat. It could manifest as in, a lot of conflict and what have you. And until I speak my truth, it's not going to change and what have you. And but if you said to me, are you authentic? I'll believe I'm authentic, but there's things that I may be avoiding. Like I'm hosting a sprint at the moment, and it's really challenging the people who are in the sprint to really start thinking really deep. And it's even making me think deep because I'm doing the sprint alongside everybody else. And it's making me think, oh my God, where am I spending most of my energy? Where am I overexerting most of my energy? And even I've spoken about it, I'm like, oh God, I need to do better. But if somebody says to me, are you doing this? I'll be going, yep, I do. But actually, are we as authentic as we think we are?
Yeah. So that just got me thinking about, actually, do we know our authentic self? Like,
Yes.
because I think a lot of people are masking for society, and obviously you've got masking in terms of, like, if you're autistic or neurodivergent, you might mask but sometimes, like, I think society has an impact on us, and we've talked about it before, stopping certain behaviors because other people are judging us for it, and we start to feel ashamed, and we start to worry, do people like that about me? And then we play down our personality for other people, and then it's finding out, like, who are we actually. So in my family, we have this thing when we start to get tired, I call it melting. It's almost like we lose all control of ourselves and we just become ridiculously stupid. Like, so Chris, my partner, for those of you listening, he hates it because it always happens at bedtime. So he's like, come on kids, it's time for bed. And, like, Maisie's just giggling in this, like, ridiculous way, and her arms and she's like, but then I get really silly as well because I'm also tired, and then we're just like being really, really daft. And I think that's when I feel almost like my truest self, where I've just got no external, like, restraints on me.
Yeah.
I'm just being, like, childlike and daft, and I love it, actually. It's just nice to, and I feel like Maisie and Joshua, they can both really be themselves around me most of the time. I mean, they do get annoying, but I know I also get annoying, and Chris gets annoyed at us all. And I think it's learning that actually I can't always be that version of myself, and there'll be some people who are doctors and surgeons, and, like, to think that those people are never silly and daft and telling jokes and like going a bit crazy and wild, but they can't show up at work that way. Like, they have to show up at work and do the job they're employed to do. So I think it's important that you can go into different environments and go, right, who do I need to be in this doctor's surgery? Who do I need to be at this party? Like, and be able to show those versions of yourself.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, actually, because first and foremost, you're right. Do we know who our true authentic person is? And that's where I come to intuition. Like, when you're using your intuition, you are your true authentic person, as in you're tapping into the real you rather than performing or masking, as you call it. I do feel like I know that, especially in business, I play less, and it's like I try and, like, sometimes I'll just start dancing in my apartment because I'm like, just dance. Like, when was the last time you, like, actually just danced and just let your hair down and stuff and everything else? But you talk about the doctors. What I really loved about lockdown was when doctors started dancing on TikTok. They'd get into a room and they'd just dance, and actually they got so many followings because people were like, oh my God, you're human. You're not just you're somebody behind the mask, and behind the operating room and stuff, there's a human being there and what have you. And I think the world is becoming a lot more lenient to that. If I'm really honest, I think because of lockdown, things have become a lot more informal. So we don't have to be suited and booted to be taken seriously anymore. I think the authenticity comes within us. I think we need to be more authentic to ourselves so that we can show out more. You said something about, drumming down and diluting your essence. Like, how many of us are not being our authentic selves? Like I go through this all the time. Like I know that as an African oracle, am I being the African oracle or not? And stuff. And I'm like, you know, am I everything that she needs to be, or do I get sidelined and stuff? And I know I get sidelined completely. I'm a human being, but it's like I always think about the authenticity of who she is. And whilst my practices are, you know, there's the bit of, you know, sometimes showing up, and what does that look like? And I remember when I got anointed, you know, my oracle said to me, you need to keep your cool. You can't kick off like you normally do. So now to be fair, I don't kick off. I only kick off in private, because like, you know, as an African and stuff, we don't kick off quietly. So it's good to just kick off. And I've trained myself to do it calmly and in a private space. But she did say to me, she goes, you can't let little things annoy you. You've got to be a lot more tolerant and stuff. And whilst I believe that, tolerance is a virtue, I believe that the virtue is somebody else's. It's not mine. So my tolerance levels are still not this. It's still not high. That's right. It's not high. I don't have a high tolerance level at all. My tolerance is very low. But I keep on learning about it and learn, because it's just not. I'm just like, nah. Yeah, I just don't. But I'm learning. And with my job, I have to learn as well. Like I say, my oracle said to me, you have to be so much more patient. You have to be so much more tolerant. So I do learn, but it is something that for me, I think in that space, I'm not my authentic self. Well, I am, as in I'm not pretending, but I have to be better.
Yeah, there's a level of control there.
Yeah, of course.
And as you were thinking then, I was thinking back to, so in 2023, I did the whole year without drinking alcohol. And the reason why I made that decision was because I'd got 4 weddings, 3 hen parties, a festival, plus adding all the usual like birthdays and everything that you have. And I was like, if I drink at all these events, I'm going to die. So I decided that I was going to do the whole year with no alcohol. And I learned so much about myself in that year, because I was showing up at these hen parties and I was still out until 6 o'clock in the morning, having fun, having a good time with people that were drunk. But me being able to be myself and knowing that they're not going to remember anything in the morning, so I can I can dance how I want to dance, I can sing how I want to sing, like, and not being bothered. And one of the interesting things that I saw at this wedding, one of the weddings I was at, and then I need to go, was that we were doing a daft like TikTok kind of dance. We propped the phone up on a chair, and we all one by one did a daft dance towards the camera. And then one of my friends, he was absolutely adamant that he wasn't doing it. He refused to do it. He was like, I don't know whether it was a self-conscious thing or what. But by the end of the night, after lots of alcohol, he was stood dancing on the table. He was like, ooh. And I could just see, as a sober person there, that those two people weren't the same person. I knew that him who wasn't willing to dance towards the camera wasn't the real him, but also him dancing on the table wasn't the real him. And somewhere in between is that person who's got the confidence to let go and have a bit of fun and loosen up, but also to have the self-constraint of not like making a fool of yourself dancing on the table. And I think that's like that point there in the middle is where he'll find like the real version of himself.
Well, thank you so much. That was beautiful. So remember, whatever you are, just lean into your authentic self. It will pay off. And what have you? Enjoy your eyebrows. We will see you next Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Let us know your thoughts. Can I just say this? We are loving your views. I don't know if I told you this, Rochelle, but I think we had like 2,500 reviews on one of the shorts that we put out and everything else and stuff. So yeah, we're doing really, really well. But most important, it's not just about doing well, it's about how many people it's reaching and also the comments that you guys are giving us. So thank you so much, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.